Our final inductee tonight is Lanny Peterson. And a Kernels player's experience here in Cedar Rapids simply wouldn't be the same without the work of Lanny. And as Dwayne mentioned, Nick's time in Cedar Rapids was unlike any other stop that he had all the way to Anaheim. And one of the reasons for that is because of Lanny Peterson. It's typically a player's favorite stop in their careers, and we thank Lanny for all of his support in putting together the host family program. In the following video, I'm again joined by Jack Rader, and we're going to discuss what Lanny has meant to the Kernels organization, Kernels players, and our host families. Here with Jack Rader talking about Lanny Peterson tonight, and Lanny has been a volunteer coordinator of the Cedar Rapids Kernels host family program for the past 16 years, being a host family for 17 years. The host family program mission is to provide a positive, home-like atmosphere for young men to live while they pursue their dream of someday playing baseball in the major leagues, and all of this is rent-free. And Jack, how important has the host family program been to the Kernels organization?
Extremely. And Lanny Peterson deserves the majority of that credit, but it really has been a program that's improved the operation here. Prior to that, all the players were living in apartments, and sometimes 4 players in one apartment. Well, you put 4 18-year-olds in one apartment, you're asking for trouble. So we started a host family program, and it was somewhat floundering for the first year or two. And then Lanny came on board, wanted to get involved with it, and really it's one of the best things that ever happened, at least in my tenure, with the Kernels, to have him come in. He took over the host family program, and you could argue that it might be the best host family program in the entire minor league system.
And really, all the host families do it because they enjoy it. They don't get paid to do it. They receive some season tickets, a polo shirt, and they get honored at a few ceremonies and recognition events throughout the season, but really it's just because they enjoy doing it and being a part of the game, and for a lot of them it allows them to have a younger person in the house, which is always fun too.
I think it's a win-win for them, Morgan. Really, if you look at it, it's a way for them to help, but they enjoy it. I mean, if they didn't enjoy it, I'm sure they wouldn't do it. And I think the testament to the quality of kids that come through here is that the host families don't change very often. You get more people that want to do it, but you don't usually get a host family and then the next year say, well, we had a bad experience. Not that there hasn't ever been one, but for the most part, the host families are there year after year. They formed a real bond among the host families themselves. And Lanny's a big key. I mean, he's the glue to that whole thing and put that entire process together. But it really, from where it started to where it is today, has come so far, in so many different areas that, really help with the Kernels organization. It's really the dedication that Lanny's had for this. It's one thing to say, okay, I'll be the host family coordinator. Lanny meets him at the airport. I mean, he took everything really off our plate. Banking, I remember when the players first come to town, we'd set up a day where, some of the banks would be out and Lanny would help them get checking accounts. So, it's one thing just to say, well, yeah, he's a host family coordinator, but it's far more than that, what he's done and continues to do really on a yearly basis. And again, Lanny does it because it's something that he wants to do. I think the other thing with that, Morgan, that's so impressive is a lot of times in the past, somebody would play here and then they'd go on, and that was kind of the end of that relationship. That doesn't happen so much now because of the bonds and the relationships that these host families and Lanny keep with the ex-players. I know Lanny's always visiting him in spring training. He goes to weddings when they get married later on, different things like that. So I think that bond that he has formed with not only the host family members but the players is one of the more remarkable things of the program.
Lanny is a native of Northwest Iowa, graduating from Rembrandt High School in 1961, then graduated from Cornell College in 1965. For 13 years, he taught at Linn-Mar and Cedar Rapids Kennedy High Schools. He umpired for 30 years and is a past president of the Iowa High School Baseball Coaches Association. Lanny is an ordained permanent deacon at St. Pius Catholic Church in Cedar Rapids. He was also a state farm agent for 28 years. Lanny resides in Hiawatha and is the stepfather of 7 children with 17 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren. It's a pretty impressive resume. We're pleased to induct Lanny Peterson into the Cedar Rapids Baseball Club Hall of Fame.
Thank you very much. It's called chemo feet, by the way. On behalf of all the host families, I'd like to thank the ball club for this honor. I'd like to thank them, and I view it as a tribute, not just for me, but certainly for everybody who's ever been a host family, who continues to be a host family right now. People have asked me over the years, tell me about your host family, and I say, well, what we have is a bottoms-up rather than a top-down organization. And it's much like baseball. I tried to find out where Jake was sitting, but I can't see him right now. But it's somewhat, if you were to ask Jake how many RBIs he had last year, or how many times he stole second base, first of all, don't confuse with the question about how many times did you spend the entire 9 innings on the third base coaching with a certain umpire, you know. We didn't see him very often. But the point is, Jake didn't get any hits at all. He didn't have any RBIs. He had people doing it for him. And when he got good players, he got good horses. And the good horses did it for him. Likewise, my horses, our Clydesdales, are the people who are our host families. They are quality people. They do the work. And at this point, if you've ever been a host family, would you please just stand and let us see you. If you are now or ever have been or whatever, you need to stretch your legs anyway. If you would, I'd appreciate it, okay? I know we have some. Thank you. You know, it begins with everybody who is a host family. It begins in their own way. Because when you talk to somebody, they think about all the nasty things that could happen, all the testosterone running around in the basement of your house, etc. But they also think about the good things that they can do. These people that you just saw provided a home for 52 different ball players last year. And tonight's is a tribute to all of them. For me, it began with Pinky showing up at my office one day, and he says, I got a hitting coach out here, and it's a place to live. And if you've ever dealt with Pinky, you know that he doesn't take no for an answer. He just, charges right through whatever. And then, so I said, yeah, fine. He said, well, I want you to meet him. Well, I want you to take him to your house. Well, so I took him to my house, and that happens to be Todd sitting over here. And Todd and I developed a good relationship. And it's the kind of thing where Todd made some mistakes. One mistake was that he, after spending the summer with me, invited me to spend a week with him during the middle of January. Well, he lived in Fort Lauderdale at the time, and he didn't have to ask me twice to do that. But as a result of that, not only do we have the grouping here, but we get a lot of support, and we've had a lot of support from people of various levels. General managers, Jack Raiders, was a very avid supporter of what we were doing, and which has continued through Doug Nelson at this point. The board of directors has been very supportive of what we've been doing. From Wally Krause, the president of the ball club when I first started in '97, to Tom Barbie, and to Gary Keppel at this point. It's also very true that even at a higher level, the Angels personnel during the good times, Tony Regan and Abe Flores, good men who also had a good relationship with what we were doing. And today it's continued with the likes of Brad Siles. of having a good relationship with our parent ball club. The managers have been supportive of what we're doing, and we need all this support. The managers from Todd to Jake. But you know, the most important people who support what we're doing, and we heard a great testament to that just a few minutes ago, are the players themselves. If you were to ask the players the word that I get right now when they've been to Cedar Rapids, if you ask them, what will you remember about Cedar Rapids? The very first thing that they say are the host families. So we'll remember the host families, number one. We'll remember the smell, number two. And the recent ones, we'll remember the cameras on I-380. But the real question is, why do people do this? Why do they really do it? Some people might say, well, it's fun to have a potential major leaguer live with you. But you know, the Mike Trouts, the Byron Buxtons, and the Alexi Casillas are few and far between. And they can only live at one house at a time. But what motivates most people, I believe, is a very altruistic thing. You know, God has given us a lot of things. And this is a way for us to share with what we have. Every player that we have is a major leaguer in their own way. We give, and then we receive. Tonight, I'm very proud of the fact that, yes, we do try to make a difference in lives. And I have some former Kernels, people that either lived with me or they ate and drank with me through the years. And I'm going to do them in chronological order. The very first one that I had was Mr. Klaus over here. It was Todd. Todd was a hitting coach in 1997. Was the first manager of our new stadium in 2002, 2003. His wife, Ellie, and they have 2 children, reside in St. Augustine, Florida. Currently, he is the supervisor of Latin American scouting for the Boston Red Sox. He tells me that if he weren't here tonight, he would be in Nicaragua. And he prefers Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Although, you know, after he invited me to Fort Lauderdale, I thought of a way that I could pay him back. If he invites me to Florida in the middle of January, it's just fitting that I invite him to Iowa in the middle of January as well. It's warmer this week than it was last week, Todd. So I am returning the favor. And you all know Todd. And the second guy that's here that I'm very proud of, you saw his wedding picture up there. Do you want to stand up for a second, Matt? Matt Garrick was with us in 1997, the last half. And in 1998, he was a catcher. His wife, Christy, and he have 3 children, and they reside in Tatum, Texas. Texas is a big state, never heard of Tatum, but it's close to Shreveport, Louisiana, he says. Currently, he's in management position with the Texas Farm Bureau. Adam Leggett, would you stand up? He was the 1998 recipient of the People's Choice Award as an infielder. His wife, Heather, and their 4 children reside in Wiley, Texas. He currently is a very successful State Farm insurance agent. The next one is a trainer, sort of, used to be, Dan Nichols. Was our trainer in 2008, 2009, 2010. Currently, he resides in Bettendorf and went back to school and is now a physician's assistant, making the big bucks. Now, more recently, a very young man, good young man, but the twins, was here in 2013, married just for 2 months or so. And Drew, where are you? Drew Leachman? Oh, he's way back over there. Drew and his wife Amy reside in Atlanta, Georgia, where he is an orthopedic sales rep. And finally, a guy with the last name of Peterson cannot be all bad, especially if he spells it correctly with an O-N instead of an E-N. He is from Savage, Minnesota. Now, can you imagine how bad the weather must be in Savage, Minnesota, if it's bad here? But a very, very good person. 2014 was with us in the Kernels, Brandon Peterson. And he's over here someplace, I think. Thank you, Brandon. And he hopes to move up in the organization, okay? This is why people become host families. Because we receive more than what we give. And we do have these relationships that last a lifetime. We do believe that throughout life, it does take a village. A village is necessary in the good times as well as the bad times. Satchel Paige reminds us that, yes, we pray a lot when it rains, but we also need to learn how to pray when the sun shines. That our village needs to be there to congratulate us, that we rejoice when we do well, but we console you when you don't do quite so well. So we are a part of the village of our ball players, of our baseball sons. We celebrate with the guy that hits the walk-off home run. If the pitcher to that for the other team happens to be one of our boys, we console him. Likewise, we are there for him. And we realize that throughout life, we need to have a positive attitude, perhaps an optimistic attitude. And it's important to be able to laugh at yourself through what we say and through what our personal experiences. Now, it is true that not all of life is funny or humorous, but even in the bad parts, there can be positive elements. Not all of life is funny. I can remember a time when a shortstop that we had, who lived in an apartment with his fiancée, got a phone call about 8:30 at night that his father, living in California, had had a heart attack and died. He didn't have a host family, but he reached out to a host family. And we went down to his apartment, called United Airlines, made the reservations, and made sure he got on the airplane the next day. I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma this past year. And it's nothing to be, we don't joke about that. That's serious. But there are some wonderful things that have happened. There's some positive things. I quit smoking. And anybody who's smoked for 50 years knows that's a hell of a thing to do. And I've also noticed that once I was diagnosed, I have had more hugs from women than I have ever had in my whole life. And I welcome that, okay? And that's good. There's a favorite story of mine is that when I was in Tempe talking to the players, we talk about Cedar Rapids, we talk about some of the things. One of the things we talk about are the differences between fiancés, girlfriends, and groupies. Now, the parents happened to be there, and they liked what I said about it. But nonetheless, we talked about those things. And after we were finished, my phone rang that night, and one of the players says, "Lanny, does it make a difference if you're married?" And I said, "Yeah." Because we have host families who said we would take a married couple. But I said, "I'll call you and get back to you." Well, I did. I called the kid back, and I said, "No problem. We don't have because I thought that was great because we knew if the wife was going to be here, there's going to be a car. And transportation is a really big issue. Okay, fine. Well, he called me the next morning again. And he says, "Lanny, forgot to tell you something." No, it's not what you're thinking. We have a dog. I said, "I'll get back to you." So I called the host family, and they said, "We have 2 dogs. If the dogs get along, no problem." They came up, the dogs got along fantastically. Host families are willing to take a chance and to do what they can. It has been said in the last couple of years that the Cedar Rapids Ball Club is a great place to work. It is a joyous place to work. Let me also add to that it is a rewarding place for volunteers. especially when you get involved with the host family program. And once again, on behalf of all the host families, thank you very much for this tribute, because everybody deserves this, because this is who we are. God bless you all. Thank you.